In today's video, collecting data around instructional coaching with Anne-Marie Chow. Hello, coaches! Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Quick Tips. My name is Kim Capino, and I've worked with hundreds of teachers, coaches, and leaders in schools around the world to help them create thriving and sustainable instructional coaching programs. And I'm on a mission to help you coach better. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. Come learn with me in one of our courses or private mentoring packages designed specifically for instructional coaches. Join our global Coach Better community, ask any questions you'd like to hear us answer, and find all of our resources for instructional coaches on our website at coachbetter.tv. You can also find us on social media at Eduro Learning or in our Coach Better Facebook group, and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube to catch all of our latest videos. If you're not sure where to start, take our free quiz to get a tailored list of resources delivered straight to you and designed specifically for your level of coaching experience. Find it at coachbetter.tv/quiz. In today's episode, we are talking about collecting data around instructional coaching. This episode is a highlight from one of my favorite episodes from a previous season featuring Anne-Marie Chow, who at the time was middle school vice principal and English teacher at United World College in Southeast Asia, East Campus in Singapore. I'm so excited to be sharing this highlight today because not only is Anne-Marie amazing, and you should definitely listen to her full episode, I'll link it up here and in the show notes, but if you've been watching or listening to Coach Better this season, you know we're talking a lot about measuring your impact. I just released an episode that I'll link up here and in the show notes specifically about the importance of measuring your impact as an instructional coach and how you can get started. Because instructional coaching is a non-teaching position, it's so important for coaches to be proactive about measuring and sharing the impact of their work. It's a role that's both challenging to find the budget to hire for and one that's easy to cut if school leaders don't see the intended outcome. The more coaches can do to collect and share data around their work, the easier it will be for school leaders and teachers to see the value of coaching. You might also be interested in our previous episode that I'll link up here and in the show notes about the research that we uncovered through ACES, the Association for the Advancement of Instructional Coaching in International Schools, about clarity and measuring impact of instructional coaching programs. Today's episode highlights the experience of coaches at UWC Singapore and the actual types of data that they were collecting at that time. If you're an instructional coach curious about getting started collecting data, there are some great ideas here, and hopefully this clip will inspire even more ideas that will work just right in your school context. If this is an area you'd like to grow, stay tuned to the end of the episode for another great learning opportunity for you to start measuring your impact right now. Okay, let's jump in. You talked about collecting data and understanding the impact of coaching in terms of student learning in that last kind of response. What kind of data is your coaching team collecting? And maybe you know this more from when you were a coach and like you can reference back. I don't know how in your new position, how like in the weeds you are with that, but then how are they using that data and what makes that data so valuable for them and the school?
Yeah, so this is probably the hardest question of all your questions because we're in such a transition year right now in the middle school. So this is Sarah's first year coming in. And then our digital literacy coach has shifted into another role and the new coach comes next year. And so it's a little bit messy in that sense for our coaching team in the middle school. But so what Sarah is doing, and this I think is relevant for new coaches in a school, is the data that she's collecting is just all about making sure she's getting a broad view of what learning looks like in our middle school. And so she's tracking which classroom she's been in, which classrooms she's returned to, which of those visits has then led to a coaching conversation and some specific coaching work that she's doing. And then with that specific work, she might be collecting more specific data. But right now, kind of the overarching data is just, am I making sure that I'm seeing everyone? And as you know, in a big school, it's easy, like, oh yeah, I know this hallway really well. And it's like, oh, I forgot about that hallway. And oh, what about that floor? And the different departments that are scattered throughout our campus. And so that's the data she's collecting. And then she and I are working together to think about what data we might want to intentionally connect, think going forward. So the middle school leadership team, we're in the process of finalizing our strategic plan for next year. And so Sarah and I will take that and we'll look closely at how that connects with what she's already been learning about our school culture and where there might be a good next step in terms of what data we would want to collect for supporting that next step. Our hunch is that it might be something around student agency. We're doing some reading right now about personalized learning and what might that mean for us as a middle school. And so I think looking for what's already happening to be able to name that for our school, for our teachers, as we think about what our next steps might be. So yeah, it's work that we're excited about, we're interested in, and I think it's going to be fun to bring our new digital literacy coach on board with that as we go forward. In the past, you asked that question in the past. So for me in the past, when I was working as a literacy coach, the data that I was collecting initially was very much around like basic structures that we had put in place through PL. So we were new to workshop. And so we had decided this is the structure we're going to use. And so then, just the wonderful benefit of working with a small English team, there's 9 of us. And so all of our PL was in a group of 9 passionate teachers who were excited to bring in the workshop model. And so it just flowed really naturally to then be collecting data around those structures. So looking at how long mini lessons are, how many conferences you're getting in, when you're conferring, what are the things you're bringing into that conference in terms of compliments and teaching points, and are you modeling or not modeling? And then all of that was just it's such a trusting environment where I was just able to feed back with teachers and say, this is what I noticed. What do you think? And because we had recent PL, they were able to identify for themselves like, oh, wow, that's going really long. I'd like to revise that. I don't know how to revise that. I remember early on. So I love using digital tools to help collect data. So video and audio recordings, because then like the data is on the table as a third point for the teacher to investigate for themselves. And so one of our teachers, who I won't say his name, but he wouldn't mind me sharing, I'm sure. But anyways, he was like, can you just come and film my conferences and then let's look at it together, because I don't know what I want to do next. I'm not sure where I'm at. And he had thought that it might be around like better teaching points or better compliments, the quality of those things. So I filmed a bunch of conferences and we looked at them together, and he was just like, oh my gosh, I don't give my kids any eye contact. I'm like hunched over my notebook, writing notes frantically, and the kids over here, like, where's my rapport? What's happening? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like this one little thing. And so then he was quite intentional about that, and then came in and did some more videos. And now, of course, that's old habit for him. But the video data is what allowed him to see for himself, where if I had come in and said, so tell me about your rapport with students, he would have been like, yeah, it's great. My kids, we have great connections, no problem. But that video data really was supportive.
I've also had a lot of teachers tell me that they really appreciate from their coach coming in and doing the filming, exactly as you described. Like, just because, just the way you say it's a third point. Nobody's pointing anything out. We're just looking at it together. And 9 times out of 10, you don't even have to say anything. The teacher themselves is going to notice and recognize where they want to go next. And it's just some information. I've also had a lot of interesting conversations with the remote and hybrid learning now, that even though the setting isn't exactly the way we want, it's so much easier to record, because like we're doing now, all of our classes are, maybe not in Singapore, but many schools, their classes are like this, and just clicking the record button is just another second. And I'm hoping that will take away some of the stress about being recorded, because now I'm more used to having that happen. because I do think it is so valuable.
Yeah, it is so valuable. And I mean, the nice thing is using things like audio when you don't need to see the visual, but you're looking for the language or you're looking for the pacing of something. And that tends to be a little less daunting for teachers, and also something they can gather themselves. And so I've had several coaching cycles that involve like, okay, your next steps are to carry your phone around with you and audio record 5 conferences. I don't ever have to listen to them, right? Because again, I'm not evaluating you. You listen to them. Here's our 3 questions that we've been focusing on, and then we can reflect together going forward.
What I heard through everything that you've said is how, I don't know if systemic is the right word, but how built into school culture the data collection that you're doing is. And I think that's a really aspirational element that coaches can listen to, watch, and think about for their schools, because you really talked about tracking the data in terms of making sure you're reaching every teacher, but then how that fits in with the strategic plan. So I'm maybe not going to coach in every single aspect that I can, but I'm going to focus my energy on moving the school forward in this direction because that's a strategic plan. And then even the same example from the literacy coach, you were working on workshop models, so that was what your coaching kind of focused on. Yeah. I'm wondering if school, I'm always putting you on the spot, if schools aren't as organized, I don't even mean organized, but as connected with what their coaches are doing and what the strategic plan is, would you still recommend that the coach just kind of take that as their own guiding point? Or because I think a lot of times we get in this situation where there isn't necessarily a clear focus and direction. And so we're just kind of going on, what does the teacher want? And let's just move forward in that direction. And listening to what you just said, I'm like, oh, that's not good enough because it should be like what you just said. But I think a lot of times it's just not.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my nudge would be for schools that are in that situation where it's not as connected with the coaches and strategic plan and that type of thing, would be to consider what can you connect it to. And so whether that's your teaching standards or if you have learning principles for your students, other guiding statements that your school may have, to be able to put a frame around what you're doing. My hunch is in a school like what you're describing is there's probably also not a systemic culture of coaching. And so as a coach, you're wanting to build that culture of who you are and how working with an instructional coach is self-directed to improve your practice. And so finding a way of framing what you're doing with teachers to be able to help them connect that to what they already know, what they're already familiar with in that school culture, but then also that route becomes a way of connecting across the teachers you're working with, across the departments. And so that's where you can find some synergy in what you're doing, just like what's happening with Sarah right now in the student feedback, because like we're all getting this feedback from students. It's the same questions. And so this is something in common that we have to then work together on. So I think I would nudge in that direction to find something to frame that's familiar to that culture, that school.
We've come back to it a number of times in this conversation, naming things and making it explicit what we're doing. I think that's what you described here is like, this is how the work is going to grow you as an educator and how it connects to the bigger picture of your school. And I think that aspect of naming is crucial. I hope you enjoyed this clip with Anne-Marie. It's always helpful to hear what data collection, measurement, and reflection on practice looks like in different contexts to get ideas and inspiration for our work. If you've been watching or listening to Coach Better, you know we're talking a lot about measuring your impact And we often talk about reflecting on your practice. That's because this is a topic that comes up time and time again in my conversations with school leaders and coaches. The reality is that collecting data around coaching is complex, and there isn't really a one-size-fits-all approach that all coaches can just pick up and do. As I mentioned on this previous Coach Better quick tip that I'll link here and in the show notes for you, it's an iterative process, and the most important part is to just get started. That's why we include measuring your impact in all of our courses for coaches at the level that's right for your experience. Not only do we have a mini course called Measuring Your Impact as an Instructional Coach that goes much deeper into this topic that you can start today. I'll link it up here and in the show notes. But each of our global cohorts includes a section on measuring your impact, tailored to your experience level. We offer one global cohort for each of our 3 courses every year. Each of our 3 global cohorts will help you take the next step in measuring your impact, either as a brand new or aspiring instructional coach in getting started as an instructional coach, or as a current coach in the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program, or as an experienced coach who's ready to leverage their coaching into leadership in Coaches as Leaders. Find all the details about all of our courses at coachbetter.tv/learn. Global cohorts open once a year. If you're not sure which course is right for you, watch one of our free workshops for instructional coaches designed for your experience level so you can take the next step in your learning right now and uncover which course is right for you. Find them all at coachbetter.tv/learn. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. If you're curious right now, if you have questions, please reach out. You can leave a comment below or on the show notes on our website at coachbetter.tv. You can join our Coach Better Facebook group, or you can find us on social media at Eduro Learning and send me a DM. I'd love to support you on your coaching journey. See you next time.